All right, so you wanted the rundown on Aaron Reitz, huh? President Trump's pick for the Justice Department's Office of Legal Policy. And we've got this CBS article right here that really dives into his background. But the real head scratcher is these deleted tweets. Thousands of them just gone right before his confirmation hearing.
Yeah, that's a little suspicious, isn't it? I mean, why would you go on a tweet deleting spree right as you're about to, face the music?
Yeah, makes you wonder what he was trying to hide. But okay, before we get to the whole vanishing tweets thing, let's back up a second. So, Wrights, he's got a pretty solid resume, on paper at least. Texas Deputy AG, Ted Cruz's chief of staff. But this Office of Legal Policy thing, um, I feel like maybe not everyone knows what that even is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's a pretty influential position. Whoever holds that office advises the attorney general. They help pick federal judges and basically shape the whole legal agenda for the entire Justice Department. So, yeah, Wright's views on things, those could have a real impact.
Okay, so high stakes then. And then we've got this tweet where Wrights is praising Joseph McCarthy.
Right.
So for our listener who maybe hasn't heard of him, McCarthy was the senator back in the 50s who went on these anti-communist witch hunts. And Reitz even captioned this photo, "Bring back the good old days." So what do you make of that?
Well, like, McCarthyism is a pretty dark chapter in American history. He basically used fear and intimidation to accuse people of being communists, often without any real evidence. And due process, that whole idea that you're innocent until proven guilty, out the window. McCarthy ruined lives and set a dangerous precedent for how we handle dissent in this country.
Yeah, and Reed seems to be looking back on that time, fondly. So how likely is it that we would actually see a return to those tactics today? And what would that mean for someone like you, just an average person going about their life?
It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's not entirely impossible. I mean, look, we still grapple with this whole balancing act between security and liberty, especially in times of crisis. A Justice Department that was influenced by McCarthyism, it could mean more surveillance, less tolerance for dissenting opinions, and potentially even a climate of fear where people are afraid to speak out.
So this isn't just some, abstract legal debate. This could have real-world consequences for people.
Exactly. And that's why understanding Reitz's views is so important.
Okay, so we've got the McCarthy tweet.
Yeah.
But there's another one where Reitz is basically saying that a judge shouldn't enforce a ruling on abortion access unless they feel like it.
Oh, wow.
He later tried to walk it back a little bit, said that following court orders is fact law and case specific, but come on, that sounds a bit like picking and choosing which laws to follow, right?
Yeah, it definitely raises some concerns about his respect for the rule of law. I mean, the courts, they interpret the law, and their decisions are supposed to be binding. If government officials start cherry-picking which rulings they want to enforce based on their own personal beliefs, well, it undermines the entire system. I mean, imagine if everyone did that. Chaos.
Yeah, talk about a slippery slope. Like, I'll follow the speed limit unless I'm late. But this is serious stuff we're talking about here, not just traffic laws.
Exactly. This isn't about, individual whims. It's about the integrity of our legal system. This idea that you can just ignore a court order if you don't like it, that's a recipe for disaster.
So something I noticed, his view on marriage as a public institution rather than a private one. It's interesting given his stance on enforcing court orders. Could there be a connection between his personal beliefs and how he approaches the law?
That's a great observation. And it leads us to another deleted tweet that didn't get as much attention, but is pretty revealing. So in this tweet, Reitz says, and I quote, "The more one realizes that marriage is more of a public institution than a private one, the more arranged marriages, rightly understood and coupled with some limited guiding principles, make a lot of sense."
Whoa, okay, what is going on here?
Yeah, this one's a doozy. It really gets to the heart of, individual autonomy, something that we as Americans, we hold dear, we choose who we marry. It's a fundamental right. But Wright seems to be suggesting that maybe arranged marriages with some guardrails, of course, could be a good thing. It's a pretty jarring statement considering our, legal and cultural norms.
Yeah, honestly, it kind of creeps me out a little bit. I mean, I believe in freedom of choice, and that definitely extends to marriage. The idea that someone else could just dictate who you spend your life with is just wrong.
I hear you. And legally in the U.S., marriage is very much about individual consent. Wright's statement seems to downplay that a little bit. Pushing this idea of marriage as serving a broader societal purpose, almost like a contract for the greater good.
So maybe he's not outright endorsing forced marriages, but it does make you think about how he views the balance between individual rights and what he sees as the public good, especially in a role where he'd be advising on things like I don't know, LGBTQ plus rights, reproductive rights, areas where personal freedom is often at the forefront.
That's the key takeaway here.
Hmm.
If Reitz is confirmed, he's going to be dealing with issues that touch on some deeply personal freedoms. And this tweet, it raises questions about whether he truly grasps the importance of individual autonomy in a free society.
Okay, so we've kind of got this pattern emerging, right? Disrespect for court rulings, a weird view on marriage. And there's more where that came from. He had tweets about ending birthright citizenship, going back to harsher prison sentences, and even called Roe v. Wade garbage. Pretty heavy stuff.
Definitely. And it's important to understand how these views fit into the larger conservative legal landscape. It's not a monolith. There's a spectrum of thought.
So is he like a fringe figure, or is this mainstream conservative thinking? Help me out here.
Well, let's take birthright citizenship, for example. Reitz's view that the 14th Amendment doesn't automatically grant citizenship to children born in the U.S. to non-citizen parents, it's shared by a segment of conservative legal scholars. But it's not universally accepted, even among conservatives. It's a hotly debated issue.
Okay, so he's kind of picking his battles here, maybe aligning with certain conservative viewpoints, but not always towing the party line, so to speak.
Exactly. And on mandatory minimum sentences, his call to make mandatory minimums great again, it reflects a tough-on-crime stance that was popular among conservatives in the past, but has really fallen out of favor recently. Even many conservatives now acknowledge the harms of mandatory minimums, things like mass incarceration and racial disparities. So Reitz might be a little bit out of step with the evolving consensus on that one.
Right, so a bit of a mixed bag, even within the, conservative framework. I have to ask about the abortion tweet. Calling Roe v. Wade garbage, that seems pretty extreme, even for someone with conservative views.
It's a strong statement, no doubt.
Yeah.
And it aligns with the, anti-abortion movement, which has been a core part of the conservative legal agenda for decades. But even after Roe v. Wade was overturned, there's still debate among conservatives about how to regulate abortion at the state level. It's not as simple as it seems.
So even on this hot button issue, there are nuances, different schools of thought within the conservative camp.
Right. It's a reminder that you can't just slap a label on someone and call it a day. There's always more to the story. And that brings us back to these deleting tweets.
Yeah, the elephant in the room. He scrubbed them, which either means he's having a major change of heart or he's trying to hide something.
Or maybe a bit of both. The fact that he deleted them suggests that he realized they didn't exactly paint the picture of, someone who's fit for a high-level Justice Department position.
Yeah. So does the scrubbing make these tweets more or less relevant when we're trying to judge his qualifications?
That's the million-dollar question.
Uh-huh.
On the one hand, deleting them looks shady. Right? It's like, what are you trying to hide?
Yeah.
But you could also see it as an attempt to distance himself from views that he no longer holds or that he feels, misrepresent him now.
I mean, people grow and change, right? I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. But in this digital age, your past can really follow you around like a shadow.
Exactly. And it's a challenge for all of us, not just someone like Reitz. How do we reconcile our digital past with who we are today? Especially when it comes to public figures. There's this expectation of transparency, but also this understanding that people evolve. It's a tricky balance.
Totally. And speaking of scrutiny, the White House is already out there defending Reitz, calling him eminently qualified. But are they just trying to spin this? What are the senators on the Judiciary Committee going to make of all this?
It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out in those confirmation hearings.
Yeah.
They're going to be looking at his legal background, for sure, his temperament. But you just know that these tweets are going to be front and center.
Right. And his supporters will probably say, he's changed, that those tweets don't reflect who he is today.
Right.
It's like, how do you weigh someone's past against their potential future? That's a tough call.
It really is. And the thing is, the Justice Department, they're supposed to be the guardians of the law, protectors of our rights. So the person in charge of legal policy, their views really matter.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. If Reitz is confirmed and he brings these views with him, it could have a ripple effect on everything from criminal justice reform to immigration to, well, you name it.
Exactly. It's about more than just one person's opinions. It's about the potential impact on real people's lives. And that's why this whole deleted tweet thing is so fascinating. It forces us to grapple with some really tough questions.
Like, how much weight should we give to someone's online history? Are we all just prisoners of our past tweets? And if someone tries to wipe the slate clean, does that make them more trustworthy or less?
Those are the questions we need to be asking, not just about rights, but about anyone in a position of power. We live in this digital age. Our online footprints are everywhere, and they can reveal a lot about who we are, or at least who we were.
Right.
So how do we judge people fairly in light of that? There are no easy answers.
No, there aren't. But I think this whole rights situation is a good reminder that we all need to be more mindful of what we put out there online. Because you never know when those tweets, those posts, those comments might come back to haunt you.
Yeah, and it's not just about avoiding controversy or anything like that. It's about being authentic, standing by your values, and recognizing that words have power. They can inspire, they can inform, but they can also damage and divide. So, we need to choose them carefully.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We went deep on Reitz's background, those controversial deleted tweets, and what all this might mean for his nomination and maybe even for the future of the Justice Department. It's a lot to unpack, but hopefully you're feeling a bit more informed, a bit more equipped to make your own judgments about this whole situation.
That's what we aim for. Knowledge is power, and we want to empower you to think critically, to ask tough questions, and to engage in meaningful conversations about the issues that matter most.
So, as always, thanks for taking this deep dive with us. And until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, even in the digital age, actions speak louder than deleted tweets.